All right, we all know sleep is important. You know it, I know it, the trees know it, every single person knows it at this point. But what about sleep is actually important? Is it the duration, so the amount of time you spent asleep, or is it the different stages of sleep that your wearable are incorrectly reporting every single morning when you wake up and look at your watch or your app? Or is it the regularity or consistency of your sleep schedule? We're going to be diving into all things sleep with a newly published study from September 2023. Let's dive in. This is the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast, and we're here to build autonomous athletes and put phenomenal programming into every garage, basement, and spare bedroom out there. I'm Jerred Moon, and I'm with Joe Courtney. We are strength and conditioning coaches who have turned over 20,000 people into garage gym athletes over the last decade. And we're here to reduce the information overload that exists in the health and fitness industry today. We're going to do that by covering relevant science and give actionable takeaways, not only from the data, but from our years of experience. So let's dive in. All right, today we're going to be talking about all things sleep and really covering this new study from September 2023, which is really cool. But I thought a good thing to do before we dive into the science and the data would to briefly talk about my sleep history, Joe's sleep history, kind of what we've been doing over the years. And Joe, I'd love to kick it off with you, man. Like, what's your sleep journey been like? You know, I want to leave that as open-ended as I possibly can. You know, we've known each other. You've been around, for like a decade, and I'm sure you've gone through different sleep cycles and stages, just like I have. But you know, either pre-Garage Gym Athlete Neo 3, what was your sleep like? What's it been like over the last 10 years of us working together? And what's your sleep like now?
I'm actually kind of boring when it comes to sleep because I remember back in high school making myself go to bed at by a certain time, like 9:30, 10 o'clock. I've just because waking up in the morning and hearing that alarm clock, I always hated it. So I always knew that I needed to get enough or earlier sleep. Now it was really just purely based off of the wake up sucking and having the wake up suck less. No health parameters toward that. Going into adult and everywhere, I think it just stuck. However, since we've worked together and then gone through the either the books, the literature, the studies, my sleep patterns have improved, and I found ways to improve as I get older, and making sleep quality better as I've gone through. I know my main sticking point with sleep has been usually falling asleep. That's been an issue of mine, and I used to always fall asleep with. I usually just put the TV on and just lay in bed and then kind of roll over and fall asleep when a commercial is on. So let's set the sleep timer. But now I've definitely don't do any sort of screen before sleep. And then regulating temperature a bit more. I mean, I always need to be cool, but chili pad and just staying, just improving sleep hygiene, I guess what it's called. It's the sleep habits as the main things that I've changed over time. But I've definitely always wanted to basically give myself a bedtime, especially during the week.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, kind of similar for me. Growing up, my parents gave me a bedtime and they were kind of strict about it. And I just kind of stuck with that. I would say through high school, obviously there are times when like you're out with your friends or whatever as you get older, but those are kind of like the one-offs, not like the everyday life. And then when I got into college, I was in ROTC, so I had to wake up early for PT basically every day of the week. So I was pretty consistent again, other than whatever, late night with friends, Friday, Saturday, that kind of stuff. Pretty consistent. It wasn't until I actually got in the military where my sleep got really jacked up. I was staying up super late, waking up at 4 a.m. And that's probably where my sleep got the worst. And then right around that time, having kids, I had 3 kids. We have 3 kids. And, going through the infant stages of all those kind of jacks with your sleep to some degree. And then, after I got out of the military, my sleep got better, other than like still having young children. But I've just been like, I'd say over the last 5 to 7 years, I've been really honing in, perfecting sleep as much as possible. Looking at wearable data, like you said, reading books and literature, just trying to always make sleep a priority, sleep consistency, getting as much deep sleep as I can, all these kind of things. But now it's a massive priority for me. I mean, a huge priority is getting enough sleep, going to bed on time, because I just how I feel the next day. And even with our kids, like I don't give a lot of advice on parenting or anything else, but when it comes to our kids' health, ever since they've been born, we've like our number one priority for their health has been sleep with our children, and that's even pre-literature. Like we just notice their attitudes are better, they're more resilient, they're just better when they sleep better. And I think most parents learn that over a certain amount of time. So, but sleep is we've I just know a lot of parents out there, and no judgment, like you do whatever you have to, but like having these crazy late bedtimes with their kids, but then still having to wake them up for school. Like I think that's like going to be a detriment at some point, either in behavior or learning or something like that. Just it challenges them to some degree, and so it's a big deal at our house, and it's definitely evolved over the years. Because I used to not value sleep that much at all, and now it's like my number one priority when it comes to health.
Yeah. We had to get tubes in Landon's ears because of drainage and stuff like that, and his sleep was terrible before. I just looked at my aura, and like within like 2 weeks after he got his tubes, not only did we know he slept better, we know we slept better, but I looked at my aura, and there's like a significant jump up in sleep time and all the markers from aura after just him getting his tubes in, because all of us were sleeping better, and everything was just attitude, him, and even training night and day.
That's crazy, and that's kid. I mean, I didn't have a wearable for William. I didn't have a wearable for Graham. I think I have wearable data for Eleanor. Um, I don't even want to go look back at it. Like I don't know. She was an okay sleeper. William was the worst. So if I would have had wearable data during that time, it would have been pretty awful. But let's dive into the study. So the name of the study, I'll go over the details real fast. The name of the study is Sleep Regularity is a Stronger Predictor of Mortality Risk Than Sleep Duration, a Prospective Cohort Study. So we're kind of giving away what it's talking about right there in the title, but we're going to go over it anyway. So I like to break down the who, what, where, when, how, why quickly. So researchers were analyzing the data from 60,977 UK biobank participants. So this is a study investigating the relationship between sleep regularity and duration. So regularity is just falling asleep around the same time and waking up around the same time. And it's looking at the impact on all cause and cause specific mortality risk. So all cause mortality, meaning just like death by any cause, and then cause specific, they looked at like cancer and cardiometabolic risk factors, things like that. So the data was sourced from the UK Biobank. It's a large-scale biomedical database and research resource. This was done in September of 2023. To be honest, it's probably one of the fastest turnarounds we've ever done for a study. Just covering it basically less than 2 months after it comes out. So go us. And then how they did the study, they were utilizing over 10 million hours of actigraphy, which is basically a sleep wearable. I looked into it a little bit more. It's just like a sleep wearable device that people can use to measure sleep. Probably not much different than what most people are wearing these days. And they looked at the data to develop a sleep regularity index called the SRI and analyze sleep patterns in relation to mortality risks. And they had a 7.8-year follow-up. So pretty in-depth study. And they adjusted for a lot of things. I'm not going to get into it, but like I'm pretty happy with the data overall. I don't see anything like sticking out. And again, I'm a non-scientist, but I didn't see anything that was like, oh, why didn't you do that? And the main reason they want to do this study is to understand the impact of sleep regularity and duration on health outcomes, and challenging the traditional focus on sleep duration alone, and highlighting the importance of sleep regularity as a stronger predictor of mortality risk. So, Joe, what did you think of this study as you were looking into it a little bit more?
So some of the in between, how they, predictive studies sometimes can be a little confusing, and the large pool of data that they were dealing with, I kind of got lost in the mud a little bit. However, I'm really glad that they did this, because it makes the conclusion and everything else makes a lot of sense. And I would have never thought to compare sleep duration with regularity. Like everything you always hear about is, get your 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Even like the book Why We Sleep is a lot about. I mean, obviously there's good sleep practices, but sleep duration, and even might even encourage some napping just to get your sleep in. But there's not a whole lot of that I've heard about making sure everything is more consistent. Obviously, consistency in sleeping and habits makes a difference and helps you keep to those habits, those sleep times. But it's not all about how long you sleep. So it doesn't matter. So like, and we've been kind of doing this on our own even before all this, but that was really the most interesting part is that like how did they the fact that they thought of it to compare duration and regularity, but then the massive amount of people and data and everything that they did and how they broke down each section of it. It wasn't just like either consistent or not. There's different levels of the consistency and regularity and everything that they went into, which I thought was really really cool.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting that they did do that. And ultimately what they found was irregular sleep is means you have a higher risk of mortality, all cause, cancer, and cardiometabolic. So if you are an irregular sleeper, that's a bad thing, according to this study. And sleep regularity has a greater indicator than sleep duration for all cause mortality. It doesn't mean duration is insignificant. It just was greater, significantly greater, the regularity than duration. So it does not mean, hey, I'm a regular sleeper, but I only sleep 4 hours per night. Sorry, there's there's an overlap here. You have to kind of do both. And what they actually found with sleep duration, I wanted to point out, and this is covered in most sleep literature and books, but there is a U-shaped curve with duration. And so typically, and I try to put numbers on it to the best I can, but typically if you're sleeping like less than 6 hours, your mortality risk increases. And then it's a U-shaped curve because as you go from 6 to like 7 and 8, that drops your chances of death or mortality significantly decrease when you get to like 7, 8 range. And then really once you get above high 8s, 9+ hours, your chance of death increases again. So it's a U-shaped curve when it comes to duration, because if you're not sleeping enough, your body's not able to do the things that it needs to do to repair itself, immune function, all those kind of things. But then if you're sleeping too much, that's generally an indicator that something's wrong. Like maybe you have too much inflammation. Maybe your body you're having really fragmented sleep. So you're having to stay in your bed for longer periods of time. So sleeping too much is also bad. So for me, what I'm looking at here is ultimately you want sleep regularity with a duration of about 7 to 8 hours is what the data is saying. And what was really interesting about a graph that they put in there when they put regularity versus duration was the regular sleepers who were like in the top 20% had the lowest chance of mortality, lowest chance of death. But then they also did sleep duration on that same kind of line. And yeah, if you slept tiny bits, it was really bad. But if you slept, it was 7.56 to 13.49, which I can't even believe is like was in the data. So if you slept 7.56 hours to 13.49, that was the second worst group to be in for all cause mortality. And then the best group to be in was 7.05 hours to 7.56 hours. Now, take this with a grain of salt because I'm not saying like if you sleep 8 hours or more, that's necessarily bad. Really, most of the research I've seen, it's typically high 8s past 9 is where you might have some other issues going on. So anyway, that was the main stuff from the study. I haven't seen a statement of significance in any study that we've done. So I wanted to read it because it's their paper, it's their research, and they started it off with a statement of significance. So I'm going to read it. It said, sleep of adequate duration is important for optimal health and longevity, but emerging evidence demonstrates that regular sleep timing may be even more important. Using objective measures of sleep in a cohort of more than 60,000 individuals, we found that people with less regular sleep patterns have a higher risk of premature mortality, and that sleep regularity is a stronger predictor of mortality risk than sleep duration. These findings were robust with detailed control for confounding factors, providing evidence that sleep regularity is a key index of human health and potentially a more important marker of health than sleep duration. Pretty interesting. And one thing I was actually trying to look at my sleep. I don't pay attention to it too much, so I wear a Garmin. and not sponsored or anything, but I wear Garmin. So I went to look, I was like, how consistent is my sleep schedule? So I went back to look and I was like going, at first I was looking day to day and I was looking at my sleep scores and when I went to sleep and when I woke up. And then I realized that they had already added this chart in there. If you just go to sleep and then you scroll down, it just has a sleep consistency. It's like they're ahead of the curve here. They know that sleep consistency is important. But I already had like a sleep consistency portion in the Garmin app, and I'm a fairly regular, like I have a super regular schedule right now, especially if I'm not traveling or anything else. I'm in bed around the same time. Sometimes I wake a little bit earlier than normal if I need to fit a long run in right now, but I have a very consistent sleep schedule, and I think it's something that everybody should be shooting for. So I thought that we could kind of like wrap things up with just basically talking about what people can do to fall asleep. And because the overall recommendation, if people are like, okay, what's a regular sleep schedule? Well, the recommendation is to fall asleep and wake up within 1 hour windows. So that's the ultimate takeaway. If you want to boil everything that we're talking about down to one little point, fall asleep and wake up within 1 hour window. So if you go to bed at 9, like 9 is the hour, try to be asleep between 9 and 10. If you wake up at 5:30, like, whatever you're 5 to 6, try to wake up between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. every day. Like that's sleep regularity. And that's what they're recommended. Cause that was my main question. I'm like, okay, what is sleep regularity? Are we talking about within 10 minutes, within 30 minutes? And they're saying within 1 hour is what you're shooting for on a daily basis, which is great because I think that variance allows for, people doing whatever you have in life, like one-offs, all those kind of things, and you not being able to fall asleep one night, whatever. But Joe, do you have any recommendations for sleep in general or sleep regularity for anyone listening?
I mean, it all comes down to routine for us. Everything happens at the same time every night. It starts with dinner. Dinner time is dinner time, and then we go and we watch some TV. We do whatever we got to do, and then bedtime routine starts now, especially with the baby. Whether it's bath night, we go upstairs at the same time and start the trickle down of bedtime routine, and then we're basically hitting everything at consistently certain times, and even like the kid falls asleep within 10 minutes every single time, every single night, which sometimes I find strange because how does he know what time it is? But um, us is still, we're always regimented to that. And we also, so this will probably get the most flack or pushback for a lot of people, but we keep our bedtime routine through the weekends. And basically when we travel, sometimes when we travel, things, schedules are flux a little bit, but our weekend bedtime routine is exactly the same. It's still the exact same time we go up at night. And basically the baby dictates that we wake up at the same time every morning. But even before him, we might stay up like a little bit later, like 1 hour later, but we're still waking up fairly early every morning. We don't sleep in on the weekends. So, and I always found that funny that people will, they Monday always hits really, really hard for the people who are staying up 3-4 hours later on the weekend, because then the abrupt adjust back to their early morning, early bedtime on Monday is just horrendous. So if you don't want that, then keep your same consistency of bedtime on the weekend.
Yeah, no flack here. I don't ever stay up later on the weekends for any reason, basically whatsoever. I think once you have human alarm clocks thrown into your life, which are kids,
Yeah.
you get way more consistent. I think that they help after a certain point. But now that my kids are getting older, I see a point in the near future where I'm like, you can go to bed at 10, but I'm not. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to bed at 9. I'll see you tomorrow. Because right now we all kind of, we do the same thing. I mean, my kids' ages vary, but we start with bedtime, and then we're pretty much in bed at the same time. Doesn't matter if it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Doesn't matter. We're really consistent. So I would say be consistent. Don't have just want to echo what Joe's saying. Just to give some tips, be consistent across weekends and weekdays, and try not to do those those late nights and early mornings and all that stuff. Some typical stuff: make sure your bedroom is quiet, dark, comfortable temperature, all those kind of things. I typically put on blue blockers about 2 hours before I go to bed when I can remember. I don't do this 100% of the time, but when I'm at home, if I can remember, if I am going to be watching TV or there are lights on, I will wear blue blocker glasses about 2 hours before bedtime. And I do feel like it helps to some degree. But some of the research is also saying like just avoid bright lights in general. So some of our lights, like in our kitchen, we have like a dimmer. And same within our bathroom, it has a dimmer. So like we try to keep the lights dim and not like bright, and not always like. I always notice it when if I'm happen to be at like someone else's house or whatever if I'm traveling and they're not like me, and I feel like I'm getting blinded at like 8:30 at night. There's like all the lights are on as bright as it can. I'm like, yeah, I'm not accustomed to this. It's just kind of funny how, and my parents are like that. Like every light in their house is just on like all the time. They even go to sleep and like all the lights are on. And I'm just like, you guys can't keep doing this. So, you gotta um, turn off as many lights as you can, electronics, and shut those things down. Avoid large meals. My Whoop or my Aura Ring used to tell me that if I ate too late, to be like, "You ate too late last night," and call me out on it because you have like an elevated heart rate. So avoid large meals. Don't have caffeine late in the day. No alcohol. Um, Anywhere close to bedtime, which makes it hard, right? Like that's when most people drink alcohol, but avoid
We're
that to
day
the best of your
drinkers.
ability. What do you say?
It's a we're day drinkers. If and when we do drink, I typically stop before dinner, and we eat dinner fairly late. So like usually 4 is like my cutoff drink time.
Yeah,
So
and
like
then
I
you're
might start
probably
drinking at
fine.
noon,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
still it
that's
could influence the sleep.
yeah. That I mean, to be honest, that's like earlier in the day the better when it comes to alcohol. If you don't want it to affect your sleep, exercise, obvious answer. Get a lot of exercise if you want to sleep better. I know one thing that helps me sleep is just heavy lifting. And I don't know if this is true for everybody, but I just experienced this again recently. I haven't been lifting as heavy, and I've kind of talked about that over recent podcasts and stuff, but I am still lifting. But I decided to go like heavier on the deadlift this past weekend. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm feeling pretty good. My back's great. Like, I'm going to go heavy on the deadlift. So I went heavy on the deadlift. And all's good. Like, I was able to handle the weight, no problem. But I slept so well that night. Like, even on my sleep tracker, I got like way more deep sleep than normal. And I really think it has to do with, just lifting heavy weights and taxing kind of like your central nervous system. And I think that's about it. And you mentioned your son kind of knowing when to fall asleep and stuff. A lot of that's just circadian rhythm, and I think that's what
Yeah.
all this comes back to. And there is a decent amount of research, like Huberman from the Huberman Lab podcast. He talks about it all the time, like getting morning sunlight in your eyes, like that helps set your circadian rhythm. So if you can do that, get morning light, get morning exercise, get some bright lights going in the morning. You do want to spike that cortisol, help set your circadian rhythm. So do all those things to try and increase your sleep quality. But ultimately, you're looking at, yeah, I want the most regular sleep schedule I possibly can. That seems like the most important thing. And then after that, trying to get into that 7 to 8 hour duration window. If you can kind of nail those two things, then I think you're crushing it on the sleep side of things.
Yeah. Other things, just small note is you can get a Garmin because then you have a flashlight, so you don't have to turn on lights. I mean,
Yeah, and it can even go to
that's
red,
key.
so it won't like blind you
Yeah,
if you want.
and has the vibration alarm clock. Speaking of alarm clock, so I always like to know what time it is at night because I wake up regularly in the middle of the night. And while I do have the watch that I can turn on, sometimes it's a little bright. I got a clock for us that it projects the time on the ceiling. So the light isn't directly shining at you that you're looking at. So you don't have to look around and the light is shining at you. It's shining at the ceiling, which is a lot different and better for your eyes. And it's even in red so that you can see the time and it doesn't have any sort of light affecting your eyes. So I think that was a really awesome purchase. And our son broke ours, and immediately that minute I ordered another one. So I was like, I need one of these. Um,
That's crazy. The newer Garmin's have like night shift mode. Mine doesn't even
yeah,
have that, but like it like switches to like a red, so it won't like ruin your sleep or whatever. I saw this thing on Kickstarter. This was years ago. I mean, like I don't even know if it made it out of the Kickstarter phase, but it was a thing that mounted on your wall, and like you could set. It did like what you're talking about. It could display the time like on the ceiling, but then it would also wake you up by like it would know which one was you, like which side of the bed you slept on, because you'd tell it. And then it had like this small beam of light that it would shine like directly into your eyes. And that's like that was its alarm clock, was like
Oh,
to wake you
geez.
up, because the reason I found it back in the day is because I was just looking for ways to wake up early without waking up Emily. That used to be like a
Yeah.
struggle because, believe it or not, finding an alarm clock that just only vibrated was very difficult. I ended up finding like one watch that did it. And so I bought that watch for that one reason. Now it's common in like Apple Watch, Garmin, and in a lot of watches, but it was difficult to find. So anyway, I thought that was a really funny device. I did not end up buying it, and I don't know how well that ended up doing. But
Yeah. If that screws up and goes to the wrong person, that's even worse.
yeah, well, how pissed would you be, like getting a light directly in your eye if you want to wake up?
Like the person on the right, you're right or am I right?
Hopefully, there's an app that like breaks it down for you.
Yep.
But we'll wrap this one up here. Ultimately, sleep regularity is important. I think we've kind of known that. Like when people talk about sleep hygiene, they talk about sleep consistency. And so I don't know if that's necessarily new, groundbreaking information, but the groundbreaking part of it is it's like this may actually be more important than duration. So if you are struggling with the duration side of it for whatever reason, maybe just work on the regularity. Force yourself to be in bed for a certain amount of time. Go to bed at the same time every night within the same hour. Try and wake up consistently and see what improvements it makes to your health and your overall well-being and your performance, as an athlete. Try all those things out and you'll be way better off. Now, for all of our Garage Gym athletes out there, we really appreciate each and every single one of you, doing the training, listening to the podcast, leaving reviews on the podcast, all these things. We really appreciate all of that. If you are a regular listener or new listener, you've listened to a couple episodes, we'd love for you to leave a review of the podcast. 5-star review, positive comment. It really helps the show out, helps it reach more people, and we really would appreciate it. And if you want to jump into our training, you can go to garagegymathlete.com and hit the little button on the homepage, and you will be setting up your account and getting ready to train with us, and we would love to have you. But that's it for this one. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.
Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to find out more, check out our training, or just know more about us, head to garagegymathlete.com.